Welcome to a special expert mini-series for Center State CEO's podcast, Talk CNY, presented by NBT Bank. In this series, we'll feature experts from across Central New York and beyond to dig into our membership's most requested topics. You'll also hear stories of successful collaborations between a few of our longstanding members and Center State CEO that could inspire your next big move.
Take a moment right now to subscribe in your listening app for reminders every other Wednesday for our main podcast series. And be sure to catch the rest of the expert mini-series as well. Today, we are joined by Center State CEO member Damian Vallelonga, owner of Switchstance Marketing. Damian is a brand and website strategist, builds websites, and develops marketing language for small businesses that say things their customers want to hear.
I'm Andrew Fish, Senior Vice President of Member and Business Experience at Center State CEO.
And I'm Kate Hammer, Business Coach and member at Center State CEO. We are your hosts for Talk CNY.
Damian, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to talk to you about Switchstance Marketing. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so let's start just by hearing a little bit about who you are. What is Switchstance Marketing? What are you about? How do you serve?
Well, I am a brand strategist and web strategist, currently still a web designer, graphic designer, and I help clients, small businesses, established companies who have had a tough time communicating clearly to their audience and also potentially have just outdated website or marketing in general, really focus in on the types of things that their customers want to hear and be able to position them in a way that people who are looking for the services that they have or the products they have, you just sort of you're just greasing the gears. You're making it a lot easier for people to understand why they should be paying attention to a certain business.
So that's fantastic. So, obviously it's really important for companies nowadays to set themselves apart, right? And so how do you go about doing that with companies? How do you help them identify what that story is going to be, even before you think about how you tell it?
Sure. So I was just in a 3-hour workshop yesterday with a local business where, we really had to look deep into their history and their core characteristics in terms of what they're offering and who they're offering it to, and are there opportunities? So this is called positioning. It's how do you try and carve out a space that's different than your competitors? Because the more unique you are, usually the easier it is for you to cut through and reach the people that you really want to work with.
Yeah.
So finding, is there something unique about the what you do? And then is there something unique about who you serve? And when you have the right recipe, you can really streamline your communications throughout. I'm not just in the context of a website, but you can streamline your communications so that it's just a lot easier, a lot quicker, a lot more efficient to reach the people who are looking for your help. So that's the first thing you want to do is figure out, can we identify some opportunities here? And then once you understand, okay, what's the positioning statement that we're going for? Then it's okay, let's start digging into some of the details about this relationship between the customer and the service provider or the product maker.
Yeah. When it's your own business, it's really hard to see beyond what you are used to. You are so deep in your own weeds, it can be really difficult to make those judgment calls about what is the story you want to tell? How do you want people to feel, or what do you want them to understand about what your offering is when they visit your website? Can you give us some examples of some just major blunders, red flags, things that you see where you're like, no. This is totally an issue of you not understanding your customer's perspective.
Yeah, sadly, that's pretty easy to find. So it's really that syndrome of not being able to read the label because you're inside the bottle. That it's most.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's it really is inherent to almost every entity. It's because if you are the CEO or owner or manager, whatever, you have to know so many details about your company. It becomes extremely difficult to be able to switch your stance, which is why I named my business Switchstance, to the same perspective as your audience, who really only needs to know a very small amount of all the stuff that's in your head. They just have to be able to feed them just the pertinent information that they really care about in that moment. And so just before I get to some of the examples, like what I try and explain to clients, and what it's, I think, helpful to realize, is that when we're out in the world looking for a product or a service to help with some issue, we are like, that's usually why you're looking to hire someone or to buy something, is typically to solve a problem. And most companies who are offering a service or a product to solve a problem often forget that these people on the other end really just care about themselves. So like all of us in our lives as shoppers and consumers, it's not weird or anything. It's just that we are always thinking about our needs.
Sure.
Hence, like, okay, I got an issue. I got to figure out a way to fix it. Who is out there is capable of helping me fix it?
Yeah.
Not like, oh, well, but who started their company before 1950? Like, that's really what I care about. It's not, that's never in someone's routine. It's all about how easy and quick and affordable can I find a solution to this thing that I'm dealing with. And so the more that we as service providers can get into that mindset of always realizing that people are just trying to find a solution to something, what is it about their experience and their aspirations and their issues? What can we talk about that's going to make a connection? But yeah, so typically to that point, what you asked, what are some of the issues you see? It's if you land on a website for a business that hasn't really thought some of these things through, you'll see very common mistakes happening where they're speaking either entirely or the majority of their language is just about their products or services, their expertise, their credentials, their history, which is important at some level, or it's at some point in the customer journey, but they're missing all of the opportunities to talk about what their products or services can do. What do they mean to somebody? What value do they bring? How do they impact those people's lives? Not merely what it is that you offer and why should people be impressed by all of these awards on the wall. Like, it's not enough to make a connection with somebody to just talk about yourself. So we find on websites and in marketing language everywhere, on all kinds of channels, you'll see just too much information about the what. What do we do? What do we offer? Who are we as a local business? And it's just the balance is off.
Right.
There's not enough of the other end of it because it's a relationship. It's a provider and a purchaser. And so you have to take both of those parties into the perspective if you want to hope to really make have a good ROI on your marketing budget and really hope to turn shoppers into buyers.
It's almost like going on a first date, and if on the first date where they come to the website, all they hear is the 2-hour rendition of the other person's life story, they might get a little bored and might not want to stick around for future dates, right? Maybe it's a bad analogy, but
no, it's not. That's spot on, Andrew. I think that's the thing. That's the thing. A little less you, a little more me.
Yeah. So follow-up question to that. I think what's really interesting to me is marketing. It's been around since we've been even bartering, right? So prior to even our current monetary system, but how you do it has changed drastically, particularly in the last 25 years, right? I mean, websites we wouldn't have even been talking about that long ago. But I also think there was a really massive accelerant within the last 3 years. Companies are now competing in a way that they weren't even before, just with the web and stuff. And when COVID happened and, things became much more virtual, the opportunity to be a service provider to someone when you are not in their community has drastically changed even, right? People are willing to hire someone to do their taxes or hire someone to, provide them a service that they might have gone down the street, but now they have those options. So I think it's even more important now to tell that story, right?
It is even more important, and the uniqueness is, I think, a really big part of that. So spending time figuring out how you are unique. And like I said, this is just it can be a challenge for a lot of companies. Like, I even need to find outside perspectives to help me talk about my business and how I can help. It's just it just sucks. It's hard to do. So so figuring out how you're unique, and especially, like I said earlier, if you can really dial into a specific target audience, like Like if you helped nonprofits with their taxes, like that, those are two very specific things.
Sure.
And a lot of people have a hard time realizing that there are more opportunities when you narrow, because most companies want to do as much as possible for as many people as possible. And that can just be really tough to communicate because you just have too many subjects to too many various types of audiences.
I can relate to that. Being a Chamber of Commerce, I can relate to that.
Bingo. So doing those things can really help when you are now being sort of compared on just a different scale, different level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I literally just made a note on my desk this week that just says, listen, because I'm trying to get better at listening. And it's not just like on a personal relationship level, which is very important, but from a business perspective, how can we listen to our customers and even our partners? But specifically, if you're trying to sell a service or a product to somebody, how can you do a better job of listening to them and actually really internalizing what they're thinking, what they're saying, what their needs are? If you are helping or not, how do you improve to better serve those people? It really has to do a lot with getting information from them.
Right.
So how do you go about that process? What do you recommend in order to get that information back and have something to work with?
Ideally, you have actual conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Crazy.
That's novel, really novel.
So one of the first steps that if a client hires us to develop a brand strategy and then even a content strategy for a website redesign or a build, one of the first things we do is we'll have an intake session. We'll spend an hour and a half just listening to all the things they have to say about their company, about their services, about their audience. And then before we start writing or developing any information for them, we say, okay, the next step for us to really get a full understanding of the value that you provide is actually speaking to the people who you've helped. And so we'll conduct interviews with their clients or customers and try and build a really robust picture for what their lives look like before and during and now after. Because if you can, not only is that just helpful for our research, but they can also turn into testimonials, which are super relatable if you're telling a little story. So using research from actual interviews, sometimes it's not easy to get them. Some of our clients are like, oh no, I would never ask, a former client to get, like, they can be resistant to the idea, but it really, and we record these Zoom calls. And so you are able to hear, like, you'll see patterns start to just above the surface. Like, oh, people keep saying this one term that we never heard the client say. And we realize, well, it's because they're not
that way. Yeah.
They're not thinking about it. Like, they're in their own head. So when
they're
you
inside the bottle.
They're inside the bottle.
Yeah.
Yes,
Precisely.
I do love that.
Yeah. So these are the people on the other side who are helping you write that label.
Yeah. I love
They're
it.
using the language that you need.
Yeah.
You're the people on the other side, helping them write that label. Yeah.
You are the people you are people.
Yeah.
You're good people, Damian.
Thank you, Kate.
Oh my goodness.
So, as you think about not just your clients, but businesses in the region here that are trying to, find that next gear, trying to differentiate themselves, trying to help them make unique. I hear that listening is a huge priority, right?
Yes.
Once they understand, right? There was two pieces that you talked about, right? Where's what sets you apart, what's unique, and do you have a unique audience? Talk to us a little bit about that audience piece. And does that help then drive, I assume the answer is yes, but does that help drive decisions as to how you start sending that message out, right? Because what's the message and then how are you putting it out there?
Absolutely. If you are able to focus in on a strong, clear target audience that's not everyone in the world, you just start to uncover these opportunities, because those, take the nonprofit example, for instance, like you suddenly have access or opportunities to access them in it's just different channels, different networks. Like, if you're just focused on one industry, it's likely that you can go to an industry conference or, advertise an industry conference, or sponsor something like, and then word can spread through that industry, because once people understand you are there specifically for them and not just for everyone, I think you're able to build trust a lot more quickly because they believe if you are presenting a compelling story about the services that can help them, they will be able to come to a quicker realization, like, these are the people who are meant for us. They're not just here to serve everyone. So it just becomes more targeted. Which means better ROI because you're not trying to just blanket the whole region. So there's just lots of opportunities that surface when you spend the time to figure out who are we here for.
Yeah, who are we here for?
And then are there, because you can be for an industry, but you then have to follow that up with what's the specific thing that I'm helping you with, obviously. But when you get those two things right, you've just really laid a really strong foundation for the audience to understand the value that you bring.
They can say, I'm a match, or that's not for me. And both of those are really useful.
Equally useful.
If you had one piece of advice to offer businesses in the community as they start thinking about how they switch their stance, what would that be?
It could be a two-part thing. Let's just zero in on the impact of the header, also known as the hero section of your website.
Okay.
If you're serving small businesses with, let's just say, like office cleaning, then the image, if you're using an image in the header of your site, let's not have it be the building that you work in. Let's have it be an ideal, clean, well-functioning office. If that's what the eventual goal is, to have a really beautiful, well-maintained office, let's showcase that. And then let's couple it with a headline and subheadline that speak to that experience, that goal, not just office maintenance killing it in CNY for 30 years. Like,
right.
It's not compelling. If you can marry these visuals with really strong language that speaks to the goals, needs, aspirations of the audience, then you've got a winning combination there. So it's an easy place to start, but you really have to be listening. You have to be thinking about what the other person needs.
So who are you cleaning for?
Yeah, who are you cleaning for?
Yeah.
And what's their ultimate hope?
Yeah. What do they want from the experience?
What do they want?
Clean offices for people who own nonprofits.
Sure, yes.
if that is their target audience.
And if that's the best you can do, you should call Damian.
That is also a strong piece of advice from Kate Hammer.
You got it.
Damian, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. Lots of great information and hopefully something that some of our members can take away and start thinking differently about what do they offer that's unique and who's their audience and therefore how do they tell that story.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Center State CEO's podcast, Talk CNY, is presented by NBT Bank. You can find all the expert miniseries episodes on clickcny.com and all major podcast platforms. On Click, you can join a discussion about this episode and find additional resources on this topic. Click is Center State CEO's interactive digital chamber platform where our members connect, learn, and receive support from our staff.
For new episode reminders of our main series, Talk CNY, be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast listening app. If you're enjoying Talk CNY, consider leaving a quick review or a 5-star rating.